I would really like to thank for organizing this panel discussion. Of course, as Ashok ji said, he came, and when we met in Art Park, we were wondering, but I'm of course a researcher by academics, technologist overall. But I think by passion, I am in agriculture. I have a farm, and 7 years I have not made profit. It's in Chamarajanagar. He was mentioning about Chamarajanagar. We have a farm, and I have never been able to make the money out of it in any of the models. We tried all sorts of crops, all sorts of models. And then the question was, how do we really make money? And that was the most important question as a farmer itself. So it's this session, and from my perspective, I'm trying to really bring that element. Of course, while I really look at as he talked about robotics and autonomous system, I think our issues, just to set the context, we have a great panel out here. Each of them is bringing a very different perspective. I think Ashok talked briefly about themselves, but let me share with you what each one of them really is focusing upon. So we have Mahesh, who is from NABARD, and he has been part of that, looking at the operational element, and you guys can add when you talk about yourself. We have Ravi Shankar, who is looking at a dimension as a mentor, and his major questions in our initial discussion was, how do I really sell the mangoes which are getting destroyed at some point of time? Oh, that was Mahesh only. He was asking because he was having the same issue as what we were talking about. And then Ravi, of course, has been technologist, AI and ML, data platform, and he talks about a lot of advisory to the institutional leadership. Maya, of course, who is online with us. She is running a startup, which is CEO and a co-founder of Grow Your Food Private Limited. And of course, her passion and focus is how do you really look at, she will talk about briefly when she will talk about her areas and what we are going to be focusing upon. She looks at the dimension of how to socialize to the farmer and know what all is happening. And today we are discussing here, and all of you around that, how do you make sure a large population of the farmers who are marginal, not knowing anything on ground. We have, of course, Aswath, who has been an agricultural researcher. So we have a dimension of that. Of course, I represent technologists. We have Srini, who is from UK, and Srini is looking at a different type of startup. He's founder of AgVesto, which is a sustainably centered UK business bringing insurance and capital markets to the food, energy, and built environment sectors. So if you really look at that dimension, previous sessions on sustainability did talk about some of the things, but I think he's really looking at agriculture insurance. How do we make sure that insurance in different crop cycle stages throughout plays a change? So we have a very diverse set of panels, and I think our topic was about the looking at the supply chain, which is a very large element. So we had to really think about how do we look at the technology play of this and really look at what is the momentum. So just to set the context for the panel, I think if you have heard Dr. Devai's session earlier, he talked about there is a consumer side of the problem and there is a farmer side of the problem. Farmer income has to go up, consumer has to get the good quality product at lower price. You know that, and I'm on the both ends, and I'll tell you that story that we produced good mangoes there. Locally, I was trying to sell it. He was wanting to buy at saying 8 rupees per kg, and when I come to Sanjay Nagar back here to come, and I have to go and buy the same Neelam mango, it's at 60 rupees per kg, and I'm wondering what's going wrong. And I'm not, of course, a large farmer. I'm a marginal farmer, less than roughly 4.34 acres of stuff, and then we are looking at different crops. The produce SKU size, and my own DC friends are not here, but that's the point I wanted to say, that the SKU size is just 70 kg of the mango. Now, where do you look at the 70 kg of the mango in the first, and it's coming on different cycles. So there are lots of aspects that we are dealing with. There is no labor in rural areas. No young person wants to work here. So we have, because there is no business, no money in agriculture. So how does a youth works there? We have a lack of labor force. All of us know that we have not addressed that solutions yet, and we have to figure it out. How do we make sure still the money is for farmer? How do we look at that farmer income to go up, given that there is no labor, given that he is dependent upon seed buying with the cartels, given that he is dependent upon procuring elements which are different, they are selling at the APMC, Dr. Dalwai was talking about. That's why I raised the question at that time, is there a freedom for a non-APMC warehouse guys to coming not bound by the law? So I think those are the questions that we are trying to discuss. It's an open forum. We would like this panel discussion to be saying that if our objectives are these twofold, going in future, we have to continue and increase the productivity. We have to increase the farmer income. Labor force is not available down the line in rural areas. Knowledge of agriculture among youth is going away entirely in rural areas. Nobody knows how to grow it. So we have these plethora of issues. How does technology in this supply chain and the integration really addresses total issues? I think that's the concept we are trying to dwell with in ARTPARK today, in my particular role, where we have submitted this proposal, saying that we look at 4 pilots and you are having all terrain, all different crop cycle, seasonality, diseases in the life cycle. How do you deal with this total challenge, right? Weeds problem, disease problem, prevention problem, having the quality, differentiation on farm. So with this concept, I'm just opening up to this panel and really go with the, we will have to go, and I will start with Maya. Maya, the problem is complex, and you have been dealing, so you want to talk about your little farmer project, and then I'll come to all the guys here. This is our context for today, and we'll go with the first round of just their views on this topic, and then we will open up for 2 questions from my side, which are ready, which they will take up, but any one of you are most welcome to ask the questions to deal with such a hard problem that we are dealing with. Go ahead, please,
Thank
Maya.
you, Anurag. Thank you, Anurag, sir. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Sure.
I'm audible, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I'm Maya Varghese, and I'm CEO of Grow Your Own Food Private Limited. And I've been, like Anurag sir said, I've also been, I don't know, there's a lot of audio problem. Is it okay? I've also failed at farming miserably, like Anurag sir said. And and why I spoke to Ashok sir was I wanted to find out how do you create a high salaried farmer out of our average farmer. The minute you are able to create a high salaried farmer, you kind of solve everything. He becomes a role model. He's able to sustain the farming. He's able to sell his own produce. He becomes an entrepreneur rather than depending on middlemen, and he becomes a kind of role model that people would want to look up to and emulate. So how do you create that high salary job? So there's a lot of seed fundings that the government provides for a startup, probably like me. But I believe that 360-degree strategy, being part of a strategy, especially with the unpredictable times that we live in, we need to set we need to at least give them the constant or something constant, like a process which is a sure shot success. And we need to have that in every vertical. Suppose it's poultry farming, suppose it's fish farming, even if it's dairy farming, say it's agriculture, IoT, whatever. You need to strategize a 360-degree integration process. Suppose I'm a farmer I'm making pineapples. Before even I start my pineapple process, I need the government and the parties, the players to define what is the product that will sell in the market and align myself to that particular food tech industry. So the food tech industry would define, and that particular food tech industry can be found in all our colleges and educational institutions, which can be actually innovation labs. We have a lot of colleges and we have a lot of educational institutions. We should align them to the problem that is actually there in climate tech. And once we know that this is a particular solution, this will increase the shelf life of my produce, I should be able to get it. So by the time I have figured out how to grow pineapple and I give a good productivity, I should have this segment called the food tech industry that makes sure that ensures that I'm able to integrate my produce with the food tech industry and make a product out of it. The other thing that is important is, of course, IoT. The average farmer does not understand technology, able to onboard on it easier. So I'm not taking too much of your time. I hope.
Yeah, yeah. So Maya, so with each of the speaker, I will put a kind of a time kind of a stuff so that we can finish on time. We are on the last session of it. So Maya, thanks for your initial views. But that brings me to some point on if we are looking at a 360-degree view to be provided. And Mahesh, you have been on the operation side from NABARD. What do you see the challenge? We are talking a lot of technology. We are talking about all that 360 view. We are having a pre-thought of having the price view. Where do you see it in your experience of 27 years at NABARD? How it has worked onto the ground?
See, when we talk of technology, what she talked about is the production side. Technology has to be on the production side, the post-harvest, processing, marketing, and finally, one of the key inputs, financing as well. So when we talk about production technology, today, I think technology is not an issue in production at all. Innumerable number of technologies available in production, even to some extent post-harvest management. But as she said, the awareness of the farmer onto adoption of technology is not to that extent. So where do we look at? So it's not that technology for production, how technology helps us facilitate it. That is more important. The farmer need not know it. The farmer need not know it, but if the technology can facilitate the farmer to do a particular activity, that is more than enough. So what we look at today when we talk about schemes of Government of India, so many schemes are there, right from the Agri Clinic and Agri Business Center, where the consultancy is provided. Okay, so that's a technology support, right from package of practice. We have universities, we have IIHR, all are providing technologies. So many startups are providing technologies. Ultimately, the benefit will accrue to the farmer. Farmer himself may not know this, but the technology has to facilitate the farmer in whatever he's doing it. That is happening now. Now, if you look at the whole value chain, probably the previous session on ONDC is almost like a value chain what we can map rightly. They are probably from half of the way towards marketing. We should look at from the production side. You take us input, from input if you take till the marketing. Probably when we look at the value chain, today technology is permeating everywhere, right from input supply to ultimate your Flipkarts, Amazons and ONDC, whatever it is, everywhere technology is there. It's all facilitating the farmer. Maybe we are not attributing that to the farmer as a benefit, but it's happening.
Excellent. So that brings me to Ravi, since you talk about as a focus for you is on AI and adoption of the technologies, looking at how to make that change. You have been talking about that, set some of these technology from the context of farmer, which has a vernacular requirements, which has an expectation of today. Of course, he uses the mobile effectively and WhatsApp effectively, but how about dealing with this kind of different technology like value chain or NDC app coming out or some Amazon app coming out, or what do you see that from technological standpoint as an adoption view?
See, any technology for it to be meaningful in a situation like our country, it has to be affordable, be accessible. Today, there are technologies and technologies and technologies on the production side, supply side, on the demand side, right from seed to plate, from farm to fork, right? And a lot of startups, there are 2,000 Agritech startups in India. They have solutions for everything. It's just that they are piecemeal, they are standalone, one-shot solutions. Somebody now needs to bring all those pearls, they are pearls, somebody needs to bring it together and stitch it together, make a good necklace and put it on the farmer's plate. Now, who's going to do this? Who's going to build the cat? Is it the government? Is it the central government? Agriculture is a state subject, like Dalbai was saying. It has to be implemented at the village, panchayat level. There are startups. There's public, there's private. I believe, besides being affordable and accessible, any agricultural technology slash technologies on supply and demand side, downstream, upstream, midstream, it has to be hyper customized. What will work for one district in one part of the country will not. There are 750 odd districts in the country. And also the technology has to be adapted by the crop. So we have agroclimatic zones. We have hundreds of crops that are grown in India, right from apple to apricot, from strawberry to sugarcane. We have everything that is grown. But one size will not fit all. So hyper customization, affordability and accessibility. And somebody needs to get this all together and then give like a platter, on the platter to the farmer to increase productivity. I think if you increase productivity, part of the problem, supply side problems are solved. On the demand side, then there's ONDC, there's ENAM, and nobody can control the price. Let me tell you, government of India cannot control the price.
Of course.
So if you say mango is sold at 8 rupees in Chamarajanagar in your village, and you are getting 80 rupees in Sanjay Nagar, that's how it's going to be. No amount of intervention will solve that. The thing is, using AIML, you can do demand forecasting, and you can be smart enough to see when you can and how you can get things to the market. But then, a marginal farmer cannot do that. So, because we are running delivery behind schedule and it's the last session, I don't want to go on and on. I'll stop with this. It has to be affordable and accessible and highly customized to smallholders by crop, by climate. Only then those technologies. There are plenty of technologies available in the public sector mostly, partly in the private sector.
Of course. So, Dr. Aswath, I'll come to you. Since he did talk about, crops are there and range of crops are there. You deal with in ICAR and biotechnology and division of flowers and medicinal crops, and then you have looked at hydroponics and aeroponics itself. How do you see this whole aspect of the discussion that we had till now? That will it apply to the medicinal crops in the same way as it would apply to the normal agriculture crop? Where do you see that going? Do you think that the hydroponic and aeroponics are scalable to the dimension of regular crops of cereals? What's your view?
Thank you, sir. First of all, I just take this as in a sort of a farmer. I'm a farmer. I was a scientist for 34 years. And of course, I deal with a lot of polyhouse growers also. So whole agriculture, if you take in India, it will be like 3 types. One is highly precision farming, where a lot of polyhouses are there. Like now, hydroponics, aeroponics have come. Then, of course, the monocropping like rice, apple, and so many crops are there. So as Mahesh said, technologies are there. And I do agree with Ravi that the affordable technologies are required. Say suppose now ONDC, they have talked so much, but see, we created one app called Arka Vyapar from IHR. But really we could not go it because, see, we wanted to bring the buyers and the sellers. We just don't want to, go into the trade. But only one app is required for, like a farmer. Say, suppose now I am growing a papaya in Anekal. Just like an Ola app, if I put papaya, who are all the buyers around Bangalore? Who are the buyers around, Delhi? So that type of information, if I get also, I'll get lot of. See, as you said now, mango. If you are going in Chamarajanagar, if you get even 10 numbers who are buying a mango as a buyers,
yes,
you will at least you can talk to them. See, that type of app, in fact, I am looking for it. If anybody can do startup, that will be a great help because we couldn't do it as an IHR, we couldn't do it. And ONDC told, like they have an open platform just now. Sir, that is what, in fact, we started it. But see, we want, like buyers. Buyers also has to register and farmers definitely will register because we have a lot of contact. So the moment I am a papaya grower in Anekal, if I put papaya, immediately it should come 10 numbers over all the buyers around Anekal, around Bangalore or around even 200 kilometers away. Then the price should come out. Then even as I said, like what is the price in different mandis. If that comes, then probably the farmer is the one who can really bargain with all the buyers. Sir, in the floriculture, today I am saying it morning, 2 a.m. the floriculture market starts in SP market, where the buyers who are there at 2 a.m., they simply, like among them they talk and they just buy, at 50 rupees. And within 3 hours, they will sell it to 100 rupees to the Delhi. What all my floriculture farmers are telling that, sir, if I get an information that what is the gerbera price in Delhi at 2 a.m., if somebody, then it will be an excellent. I can also bargain with that fellow. So that type of information is required. That is one thing. And technology definitely plays a lot of roles, sir. As in IHR we have now, we have an excellent, where seed production, just 60,000 seedlings can be raised in 1 hour. So that type of technologies, like it is there, but we are not really utilizing it.
So I will, given the time, I will. But
Yeah.
I think he mentioned about some points that we were saying aggregation platform, and I was
Yeah.
asking him that there is a need of a warehouse, which is an aggregation platform. But there are aggregation platform of online nature, which at least have been able to see demand and capacity planning, which should come over ONDC or ENAM to look at whether they can come as a potential to each region and then try to disrupt the market inside the state, at least, if not interstate, at least within the state, so that the price model from, as I said, my Chamarajnagar farm price from my farm to grow the, is 5 rupees, and Sanjay Nagar here it is 60 rupees I have to pay for the same mango, which I actually shipped in my vehicle and brought it at home and sold here at 25 rupees, just as a farmer. So which at least got sold at 25 because there he was asking for there. But this brings me another point. While we all talked about that the production was not an issue, and productivity is growing up, which we know established, and he said that we have, and we are second to none, even we are ahead, #1 places compared to China also. The risk of diseases, the risk of right from the growth of the seeding to the full harvesting life cycle and post-harvest, farmer does not have a wherewithal. Now, we have Srini, who is his business in UK, and Srini, so you look at the insurance, you look at the aspects from the farmer's standpoint, you are seeing it in outside India market, and you are also coming into India with your franchisees and your partnerships. Where do you see this fitting into the scheme of things for us?
Excellent. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to introduce myself. So we usually been operating in this market for a number of years before we stepped into India. Myself, I got an Indian background by origin, and I moved here 21 years ago. So I could relate issues in emerging markets as much as anyone else in the room. I think generally there is a global phenomena where, irrespective of whether you're farming in India or Africa or Latin America, farmers by themselves actually got a huge challenge of serving the community as a whole. That responsibility means the amount of resources they have and how do they handle those resources, whether we talk about soil, seed, fertilizer inputs. Credit and insurance, many way are seen as resources for you to produce sustainably. They do have opportunity, at the same time they have challenges as well. We've stepped in with the view that if you think about value chain globally, irrespective of arable livestock or aquaculture, the way credit flows into the system isn't really optimal globally. In some countries where it's largely been funded by public sector, most of the innovations, the role of private sector market when it comes to mobilizing credit, both at the institutional and retail level, can be disrupted quite a lot. Currently, the credit system usually start at the sovereign level, and then the rate at which a farmer can borrow on the ground depends on the collateral they have. So you have what you call a trickling through interest rate, where people who have assets which are in the food processing side of things can borrow at a certain rate. At the same time, they rely on the supply chain, which is borrowing 500, 600 basis points over and above what these guys actually borrow, which makes it very hard from a sustainability point of view for a small producer to actually become sustainable. And if you couple that with the climate-related challenges you have, suddenly when you're looking at a balance sheet of a farmer, you got assets which they are grappling with in terms of increase in the costs and how much they can actually handle on their own. And then you have the liabilities, which is largely unknown for a farm business, basically. This is something that you normally see across many parts of the globe. In Europe, it's not uncommon for government to have a large payout because of the drought and hail risk increasing, and so is in the US. So if you tilt the basically story back to India, where smallholders are majority of the population when it comes to food production, we look at de-risking as a mechanism where you try and understand where the value chain comes from and the economics, basically. That's where it all starts. Certain crops already are well served by the government program, but there are many other value chains which basically doesn't have the de-risking mechanism today, along with access to capital. So initially we're targeting predominantly corporate companies from a capital point of view, with a view to connect them to the supply chain, whereas the insurance program has largely been working with the value chain in different parts of the country.
Thanks, Srini. No, I mean, now I will come back to one of the questions that he was talking about. Dr. Dalwai talked about, and I am coming back to a very entirely different problem. If you look at agriculture, every time we talk about agriculture, we do not consider it industry, right? We always say, okay, this is agriculture. And, you know, the whole political system, the whole country, uh, every, everybody sees agriculture in a different sense. It never sees it as a potential industry or an economic element of industry of the country, though it has a great GDP perspective. And I'm bringing the question. And he talked about that 48% of the population today, sometime back it was 60%, now it is 48% of the population which is employed there. So, and I think India has set a target of $25 trillion by 2047 as an economy. And I'm giving you guys a rough view of it, that out of that, manufacturing is supposedly to become at that time $6 trillion. And we were talking to Mr. Baba Kalyani on the manufacturing side, and this is different data point, but I have to raise it here. He said that for us to become manufacturing, in spite of the automation that is going to be in manufacturing, the labor force that India would need for industrial manufacturing is going to be tenfold from current forces. In agriculture as an industry, we have a large target of growth in by 2047 from self-sufficiency. If it has to be seen as an industry, and its labor force, which is not now competent at all in agriculture, no youth is ready to do that, they don't know how to grow it, that labor doesn't exist. How does this panel, of course I have a viewpoint, but I'm not going to talk about it here because I'm facilitating the discussion from the agriculturists who are sitting there, technology elements and the startups and the insurance which is being represented. How do you see this? How do you see this as an industry, and do you see it as marginal farmer as a micro agency, and then see this as an industrial market with a labor shortage? Is it possible to see it? And if that has to be addressed, what is the thought of this panel? So we'll start up probably in reverse order. We'll start with Aswath. What, Aswath, do you think from the research standpoint?
Sir, I think from the beginning as agriculture student, we always tell that agriculture should take it as an industry. Then only, like some sort of, like benefit or cost of cultivation will come down. So what I feel is, as a farmer, I feel that the labor shortage is already there, and again it is going to become more shortage because it is going to the industry, labors are going. So a lot of technology intervention is possible in farming actually. Say suppose now if you take, I got a 5 acres avocado, I want at least 2-3 laborers for irrigation. Just if I put a sort of like a intervention of like a soil moisture regimes, within one labor I can completely manage it. Like that, if you take now the polyhouse production, complete auto grow can be made. In fact, in IHR we made that completely, like one hectare of polyhouse, even we don't require one labor also. So that type of interventions are required, and that is where a small startups are required. And many times, like human intervention is causing a lot of problem. And the biggest other thing, probably what I feel is, if it has to become as an industry, the pest is the one which pest scenario has to be changed, and that is through only the technology one can change the pest scenario. Because the pest, after pest infestation, then we'll start spraying it. Of course, there are now incidences like where apple scab, now their forewarning is giving based on the spores. Like that, it should come to even big, like crops like potato, then chili, tomato, then onion, then rice, this type of thing. If a technology comes for identification of the pest and give a forewarning, then probably, like it can go as an industry and complete labor force can be taken out from agriculture. That is what I feel.
Thank you. Srini, from an insurance perspective, do you see this labor issue having an impact from an insurance and insurer model for the farmer? Do you see that? And how do you address it if that's going to be needed in future, because lack of knowledge is there. But if you say lack of knowledge, if the farmer has not done something wrong, so I cannot pay him back the insurance of what happened as a process, that's a reality. So how do you see that?
Yeah, I guess in a nutshell, insurance isn't something that everyone think about every day, right? We as a human being naturally have a bias towards being optimistic, and we think things are absolutely fine until things go bad. And that means the penetration of insurance globally is a problem, irrespective of where we are. People don't necessarily go and protect everything. People protect the most obvious ones, and there are other things which basically people try and ignore. So when it comes to the lack of knowledge, or what do you call, like a labor market not being there, you can look at it in both ways. You can look at it where insurance needs to understand the sector as much as they would like to protect. And that is something that could happen where there is a number of distribution channels, like that's where the role of like brokers and intermediaries are there. It is important that when you create a product to the value chain, you really understand that value chain like you're basically driving a car. Sometimes people drive a car. There are many people who drive a car because it just moves. There are people who drive a car because they really want to experience it. So the insurance companies are now on the transition to figure out, when I'm insuring something, is it purely a financial transaction, or am I really looking to understand what a mango insurance would differ compared to insuring woodland type of crop, or insuring basically a forestry asset. In many ways, I think the narrative in the media has been about insurers basically being portrayed as a villain. Now that means obviously you're always going to have like this sectorial bias towards it. But these two parties have to come together, which is part of our job, is to ensure the demand side, i.e. the people who buy the insurance, actually articulate what risks they currently have, and then ensure that the insurers also are educated and then steer towards a good product creation. And there is a role for technology on that side. Now, people versus machines, you can look at, in my view, I think technology is not panacea. It has a role to play. At the same time, we human beings have an obligation to actually ensure it's being guided in the proper way. You can use the same tech in so many different ways. A good example is in a dairy farm, you can have a milking machine, and it's only useful if you can afford it. If basically the dairy farms are really struggling for productivity and yield and revenues, it's impossible for them to actually utilize that machine. And we are seeing the same in the UK, where the labor shortage on the horticultural side is really hurting the industry. So in many ways, I think when we do set up a policy, whether at the state level or at the national level, it's quite important to not only think about technology as the push agenda, but what's the affordability really looks like on the ground. And you basically incentivize programs which actually helps farmers to get productive,
Sure.
Not necessarily at the expense of farmers and expense of labor, but farmers and the technology can work together to achieve the common objective.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
that means anything there's scalability and automation, there's a role definitely tech can play.
Thanks a lot. So I'll come back to Ravi again on this, since he talked about affordability and convenience part, which was for important. In context of the labor, what kind of technology you would see which will be easily affordable and convenient when this kind of knowledge or the labor on the field is not there? Where do you see that happening, and how do you see that happening?
Yeah, again, like I was mentioning, there are a lot of technologies around this. There are a lot of technologies. So we're talking basically about automation and mechanization, right? Again, what works for Japan or what works for Europe and Australia and US will not work for India, for sure. But I know at least a dozen agri-tech startups who are in automation mechanization space. There's one right here, sitting right there. I know one company right here, we're using deep learning and computer vision to provide quality assurance for maize output. So automation and mechanization is a solution because, as you rightly pointed out, labor scarcity only will get more scarce and scarce. It gets more accentuated with time. But the problem is not that labor is not available in India, rural India. We have what is called as disguised unemployment and partial unemployment and disguised unemployment. So you need to, young people are not farming these days. Why? So the root cause of the problem is you need to give them 300 days of assured employment, yeah? It cannot be 30 days in a year. Agriculture is nobody's baby. It's a state subject, it has to be implemented at the village level. Center can enact policies sitting there, and then the states have to take a cue and move. But there are dime a dozen agricultural startups that I'm mentoring, that I know that have the solutions. Like I mentioned earlier, they're all point solutions. Somebody needs to put it together, string it as a pearl together as a necklace and offer on a platter to the small marginal farmer. Who's going to do it? And the problems in agriculture are too huge, too complex. So I think PPP framework, again, like I mentioned earlier, technology should be affordable, accessible. Labor is an issue, but you know today, how many drone companies are there in, there are 200 in Bangalore.
300 plus.
In Bangalore, there are 200 drone companies, out of which 100 are looking at rural India. There are so many use cases. Yes. It started to take off. So I believe technology solutions are not the issue. It's the issue of how do you take it to the farmer, how do you make sure that the farmer adopts the technology and pays for the technology. So these are the core issues.
Understood. Yeah? Good. So I think we'll listen to you, Mahesh. How this labor issue that we talked about, right, which is becoming stark, you talked about technology. That do you see the play on ground? Because you have been on ground. Where do you see? Do you see it's going to be easy for you to go it into panchayat and put it on the farm? Although it's a disguised unemployment, as he talked about in the rural area. But how do you make a model which from NABARD perspective is sustainable in that dimension, given that labor scarcity is going to become more acute?
Labor is not an issue now. Like what he said, labor has been an issue for more than 20 years now. If you look at, there is a scheme of government of India called ARIA, attracting and retaining youth in agriculture. Okay. Agricultural farm families, they are not interested to continue in farming.
Yes.
Oh, but we have come across cases where IT engineers from who were in US, they're coming back and doing farming. So if getting labor is a problem, how would an agriculture guy who is not an agriculture graduate come back and do agriculture?
But he's unable to find the real labor. That's what he's interested in it because he wants to do it. He sees the opportunity, the person who is coming from outside. But the labor issue is on the field.
No, there are now what he said, there are dozens of technologies which can actually reduce the labor requirement. Simple, if you look at 35, 40 years back, drip irrigation. Drip irrigation is the simplest technology where we can reduce the labor by lot of numbers, right?
Yes.
Because you need everything is controlled.
Yes.
So today, precision farming. Yeah. You talked about floriculture. In 90s, when floriculture came in India, 5 polyhouses of 1 hectare each was managed by one person.
And the capital cost?
Yeah, there's a cost. Any technology comes with a cost.
And that's where we are saying the marginal farmer, how do you deal with?
Now question is, if a farmer sees value in the technology, definitely will adopt it. And today, when you're pushed to a corner, when you don't have a labor, farmers are prone to adopt technologies. And this is what's happening. Drone technology, there are innumerable farmers using simple spraying, they're using drones.
What's the size of the farm?
1 acre. See, now today we are talking in an era where we are talking about collectivization. Today we have more than 16,000 FPOs across the country. Now, the government's incentive scheme for drones, population drones, it's very much applicable for an FPO which talks about 1,000 farmers, have 1,000 acres. So scale works out there.
Very good. Very good. So, I would come to Maya because we were doing reverse round this time. So, Maya, what's your view on what even Mahesh said, and how do you see it applicable in Kerala, where the more acute problem of labor would be there, given the kind of cost where you are actually looking at your work? What's your view on that?
Yeah, so very correct question said to me. As you know, Kerala, we have huge breadth of labor here. And technology, I think, is the one answer to that. For example, I have a hydroponic system. I have a system called Vertigrow that I sell through Amazon that can fit into 4 square feet and can grow 36 plants, that is vegetables, at the shortest time frame. And I can also affix IoT to it. I can have a sensor, a water sensor to it, and I can, actually align it, get the data on my phone, and actually use it to grow all kinds of vegetables. If I have at least 200 square feet, easily grow around 360 plants. So how do I maintain such a system on my terrace? how do I get how do I get my customers to do it? I need to deploy IoT technology. I need to use the latest sensors that are available in the market. I need to also train my customers, create. And so when we talk about technology, it's just not technologies we're talking about. We're talking about creating that awareness and education and conversion also. When you are introducing technology to at least the Indian market, we need to actually it is a a lot of awareness creation and education that we need to create. And like when I'm part of a Israeli immersion workshop, and I was selected from the Kerala Startup Mission, and I spent 7 days at the Galil Valley. So a stone throw away was Syria, another stone throw away was Lebanon, and it's a very highly volatile valley. And right at the crux of this valley, they've created one of the most amazing agriculture setups, where you have, for every vertical, they have created a 360-degree, prototype. Be it poultry farming, be it anything, I mean, hydroponics, be it dairy farming, they've created that vertical. And I would say that, uh, they've generated a lot of pride in the success of the farmer, because they've created highly salaried jobs, high salary jobs in farming. And I think if I were to, actually put it in one, summarize what our quest should be, if it's a combined quest, we have to create high salaried jobs in farming with use of technology, with incorporating, aligning all our education institutions, and all aligning them to the challenges in climate tech. If we are able to create high salary jobs, I think we are there.
Yeah, so that brings me to the kind of last. I think everybody is, all of us waited, but I think there is an important point which I want to leave it, and I want to keep it open for anyone to ask a question too on this difficult subject. But there is a last point. We all know that there are point solutions. We all know there is a there is always a great hydroponics, there is always a great seed technology, there is always a great drone for doing pesticides, there is always a different kind of element for giving education, there is always an initiative on carbon sequestration, all are point. How do we see this integration of technology at a small farm? And I'm not talking about a large farmer. India has more than, I think, but Dr. Albai in his session talked about, while we have only 29%, sir, correct me if the number is not, 29% is large farm, and we had 75 or 80% as marginal farmers below sub 4 acres, right? So if you look at that dimension, still the productivity is high from them, or whatever they are doing, quality great or not, money making, none of them makes money. So the question is, the big 29% may have a large money, potentially heavier money being made, and having the appetite to invest. Given this contrast, how do you get this integration of the technology? How do you make the integration to happen? I'll not go in the sequence, but please take 1 minute. It's a very difficult question. I would also like to hear finally at the end of the panel from Dr. Dalwai on this topic, that how do we look at that integration? He did point out that that's a problem, but they are all point today. Even ONDC is looking at a point way of opening at the protocol. Then there is a startup system. Then there is a technology. Then there is a marginal farmer. Then there is an aggregation, and they are all discrete. And there is a labor shortage. So whoever wants to give a view in the panel, please go ahead. And anyone who wants to ask a question further can ask. Yeah,
it's a moonshot problem. Solution is very simple. Easier said than done. More said than done. Organize. You have to organize. We have, I think the numbers are way much higher. 80 to 85 to 90% of our farmers are smallholders. As we speak, every second, every minute, there's fragmentation and subdivision of land. Every minute, every second.
Yes.
Half an acre becomes 25 guntas, because that's the way it is. That's the nature of the beast. But if you are able to organize, so how you organize farmers, FPOs, FPCs, our old cooperative, we are not, after 60 years, we have not been able to emulate Amul anywhere. for any other commodity. So let's be, so it's not, it's, the problem is so complex, it's socio-cultural, it's not technological.
Yes.
I always come, it's not about technology. Technology is there in ICR labs, it's there in agriculture institute, it's there with 2,000 startups. But how do you get them together and make it affordable, accessible? You need to organize farms. One drone for spraying or for let's say you want to monitor the health of a crop costs 5 to 7 lakhs, typically.
Yes.
Agricultural drone, DGCA approved, etc.
Yes, yes.
As a small module farmer, I'll pay 500 rupees and hire it for 1 hour.
Yes.
So question is, if 100 farmers, 500 farmers come together, I can rent and lease. So all the equipments can be rented and leased at a fraction of a cost. So
service model is key. Service model is key.
The question is, farmers don't trust anybody, right? Number one. So you have to gain the trust of confidence of the farmer. I don't know which technology allows you to do that. They don't believe ONDC, don't believe any DC. They don't trust anybody. Number one. Second thing is you organize farmers through co-op. Now we have a Ministry of Cooperation, Union Ministry of Cooperation. I think if you're able to organize farmers, 50% of the problems will be solved. Other 50% is affordability, accessibility, etc.
The technologist and service model will bring. Yeah. Mahesh, quick
like
one.
what he said, today there are drones as part of customizing centers. We have customizing centers for farm mechanization. Drones are part of customizing center. Many of the centers are available today. And what you said, the points to be connected to integrated models, there are models available today. Even the very known SBI has a thing called, Safal.
Safal is the only success story I would say at Indian cooperative side.
Dairy is one segment which has been very successful because of highly perishable nature.
Yes.
The stable perishability in fruits and vegetables is not addressed as of today because again it's diverse. The single commodity is dairy, whereas you have diverse fruits, vegetables, some climatic, non-climatic, a variety host of it.
Of course.
So that's not so easy. But there are similar models like SBI, there are people who are working on such integration where there is a procurement guy who takes into technology. There is a guy who is into satellite imagery, who takes like what we discussed in the previous session on NDVI and leaf area index and other things. Technologies are being partnered, but it's all on a very limited scale. It's all in pilot phase, I would say. Needs some updation.
Very good. Okay.
Sir,
quickly,
I am from US, Bangalore. We had a project by Dr. earlier Vaishans Narayana. It is called BioVillages, where entire thing, whatever they grow in villages, they'll just come and put it there. And again, it will go to the other village. I mean, like they pull up, say, suppose now jackfruit, some 10 jackfruit, another fellow will bring 5. So there was a possibility, yes, it is proven that it is possibility is there, just like a milk, even vegetables, flowers, everything can be done. And because, see, even now I am saying it, Ragi mission, now the entire village they hire, and one day the Ragi mission will come from Tamil Nadu and they will harvest everything one day. So it is a possibility is there, yes, as I agree with, cooperative societies, cooperation, that is very much required. And it is possibility is there to use the technology.
Excellent. So I'll come back to the two online. Very quick, only one minute. Maya, don't take much time. Learnings from outside India for this, what we discussed as a last point. You have a labor shortage anyway in that country, so automation works, adoption works easily. So what do you think, Srini, will be good recipe for India?
Yeah, so I think coming to, the tech question, predominantly tech can be used anywhere in different purposes, right? It's just a question of understanding what a particular value chain requires and how tech can be used, and then comes all the useful things that the panel discussed as well. So to me, it's never one size fits all, which is the most obvious answer I could give. But that said, the penetration of tech basically needs to be driven in a much more coherent manner rather than if something works in a country A, you just try and retrofit it to country B, because agriculture is such a complex ecosystem where it's super important to start with the farmer and end with the farmer, which means all of us basically are nothing but a service providers. But in many ways, the farmers are very clever to know what really works for them, what doesn't. But we've not to forget the bigger picture. We do focus a lot on farmers, but the land itself is going through changes globally due to climate. It is quite important to give them a space to grow and grow sustainably. So whatever it takes for us to actually do it, that's basically our responsibility to come together.
Excellent. So Maya, last point from your side before we open up for the session and concluding it. Maya, very quick, 1 minute to 2 minutes.
I think what can happen is if I want to replicate something that is successful, how do I replicate it? I need to have a consistent process for it. If I'm able to break my agriculture into standard processes, this is a standard process, and have a set of guidelines that can easily be replicated. So always a process approach, and best practices should be recorded. The same funder that we use in IT, and probably that is why we are doing very well there. We should always have that process approach and that scientific approach in farming also.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Maya. Thanks. And any open questions from anyone? You must be all tired. So I will leave it at that with the time. So the only thing before we end is to just talk about the fact that I think when one point which I am borrowing, you and we need your support. Let agriculture become an industry, and farmer is as much a customer as much the end consumer. If we take two as the nodal points as the target customer, where you have talked about double the income, but if the whole ecosystem of integration which we were talking about has to happen in all other industry segments, there is always, producers can be there, supply chains can be there, supply materials can be different, but there are always the manufacturer is a profitable entity, and also the consumer feels the value of that good and reasonable cost, right? So if these two are kept, and rest of the technology intervention and integration from automation, from AI, ML, or decision making, or robotics, or autonomous systems that we are talking about in the shortage of labor, if we see that as an industry with a service model, calls, I'm sure you know, sir, 2000 or 1998, incoming call was 16 rupees. I remember the time the phone had a cost of incoming call to be paid at 16 rupees. And today it's all free. That's the cycle of technology dimension and absorption. So the question is, and there was a service model. Somebody came in Airtel, made the service model, not the capital intensive. So we have to really look at that integration aspect of these point solutions where we have a role together. There's a technologist, there are NABARD who is working as an element from government. The government itself is represented here. And the startup, the social perspective, the insurers, that whole chain of all application with ONDC, if it is able to, I'm not sure how much ONDC will play, but if the startups who are not currently in this room, and we would have wished a lot more startups that are needed to be here in this space, it is an industry. It is a money-making industry if the service model, like he talked about, the drone company. I know we have General Aeronautics who came out of us, 15,000 rupees for one full day work, lots of revenues coming from agriculture. So we understand that there is a money if it is a service model. Nobody needs to have a, if tractor can be a service model at a 3,000 rupees today in Karnataka for a 2 hours, 3 hours plowing, I think there is a service model for each of these robotic autonomous systems, all these AI and ML application that needs to be brought on single platform. I'm hoping ONDC can allow it, and all the startups must have a great future. They will have a great future. We need some support in this aggregation platforms in some manner where the law and some kind of simplicity can happen in actually operating ground from the government, from the ICAR, from the NABARDs to push that into the system and the state governments to deal with it. But I'll really like to listen from you, Dr. Dalwai, and thank you everyone on this panel, and thank you for everybody staying so late in spite of the fact that we were delayed like hell. But it has been an interesting discussion. I have learned a lot. I would love to work with all the guys for that proposal, and we'll make that change happen. We are going to look at, we are really looking at saying how do we look at these problems together, integrate, bring this and run 4 pilots in Karnataka. Chamarajanagar on one side, North Karnataka on one side, different crops, different terrains, Chikmagalur on one side because you have a hilly terrain coming in, and different type of crops between the other side. We look at 4 pilots. We are looking at how do we build this ecosystem of service and O&M combined together in our proposal. That's what our concept note is talking about from ARTPARK, which we are going and entering into. And we work with this ecosystem which we have created here. Thank you, Ashok, for giving this opportunity, and thank you, sir, for your august presence. We learned a lot, and we look forward to the same.